Welcome to Fuck Around and Find Out, how I'm describing my life's journey. If I hadn't fucked around, I would have never found out. I decided to share my experiences, my lessons that I've learned through being in a narcissistic gaslighting marriage, to losing myself and finding out who I am again, knowing that I am stronger than I ever gave myself credit for, in hopes that this message, through my stories and the lessons that I've learned, can help people better understand their situation, or that they are stronger than they really give themselves credit for. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the situation. So if you're struggling, if you're feeling like you don't have the strength to go on, let me tell you, you do, because you are stronger than you think. Today I wanted to share a story about hope and about God. I was in a really low point in my life. I was pretty good at dealing with stress, and I'd become quite comfortable hiding my pain. But this particular day, I woke up and I was sick, and I had just had enough. I threw my hands up in the air. I was done. I was having a pity party. I was angry. I was so angry. I was angry at my ex-husband. He had lost his job again and wasn't doing everything he could to find another job, making our lives extremely difficult, not knowing how we were going to put groceries in the house, or how we were going to pay bills, or how we were even going to pay next month's rent. That burden fell on me. I woke up that morning and I was so sick. I was sick, but I couldn't take the day off. We couldn't afford for me to be off. And I stood there in my living room and I cried. An ugly cry because I was so angry. But I took it out on God. I yelled at God. And boy, did I yell. Where the fuck are you? I am a good person. I am doing everything I possibly could. Why are things so hard for me? Why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me? Where have you fucking been? I yelled and I yelled at God. I finally composed myself and I got myself ready for work. When I got to work, I was working in a retail store. I opened the doors, and that morning, a woman came into my store that I'd never seen. And she took a look at me and said, "You don't look very good." And I said, "No, I'm feeling quite ill today." And she offered to go get me something. She said, "Please, is there anything that I can go get for you?" And I had said to her, "No, thank you." But she kept insisting and insisting. And I kept saying, "No, thank you." She was about to walk away when she reached into her bag and pulled out a drink and put it on the counter and said, "I'd like you to have this." I thanked her and she began to walk away again. But before she left the store, she looked over her shoulders and looked at me and said, "Do you think he's forgotten you?" "He hasn't." And she walked off. After a few seconds, maybe a minute, I walked out to the front of the store and I looked both ways and she was gone. I was in awe. I walked back over to the counter and I called my ex-husband and I had told him what had happened. I told him how angry I was that morning and how I had yelled at God. And this woman that I never seen before came in and said, "He has not forgotten you." He just laughed it off. "Oh, Julie," he said. He didn't get it. I had gotten the sign that I was looking for, that I wasn't alone, that God was with me. So I called my mom and I told her the story. And she felt the same way. She felt that it was a sign. And that I was so blessed to have that woman come in the store that day. I went home early afternoon. I couldn't make it through the day. Well, the next day I got myself together and went to work, and one of the employees said, "Julie, somebody came by yesterday and dropped off a book for you." I asked him who it was, and he had described it to be a woman, the woman that I had seen that morning. I looked at the book, and it was called The Purpose Driven Life. I never heard of this book before. I didn't even open the pages. I, on my way home that day, I started to go through the pages and kind of take a peek at the book. Figured I'd read it later. But I stumbled upon a poem. And I can't tell you word for word what the poem said, but I can tell you what stood out to me, and what I remember till this day. It said, "You are who you are for a reason. You're part of an intricate plan." And then the poem continued, and I got to the part where it said, "You think I've forgotten about you. I've been along your side all this time. God hadn't forsaken me. I had lost my faith. I didn't put my trust in God, but He was with me. I knew things were going to get better." Every time I read that poem, and I read it a lot, I cried. An overwhelming sensation would come over me. Hope. Things were going to get better. I think we always look for signs, and we expect big signs like the story that I just shared. Well, for me, it was a big sign, but for my ex-husband, it wasn't. So it's how we look at things. I think we're given signs all the time, but we don't see them for what they are. We expect big gestures. That's not how the world works. It's not how God works. There's that story of the guy on a boat where his boat capsizes and he's in the middle of the ocean and he begs God for help. And a little fisherman boat comes by and says, "Sir, do you need some help?" And the gentleman says, "No." And another boat comes by and asks him if he needs help, and he says, "No." And a big ship comes by and he says, and someone on the ship says, "Do you need help?" And he says, "No, God's going to send me some help. I've asked for God to help me." And hours later, he starts to yell at God and says, "Where are you? You were supposed to send me help." And God says, "I sent you 3 boats." So it definitely is how we look at things and how we perceive things to be. What I've learned is over the years, God wouldn't give me anything that I couldn't handle. At the time, I didn't know how I was going to handle it, but I always did, and I always made it to the other side. God wouldn't give me anything I can't handle. Sometimes bad things happen to us, but I truly believe that these things that happen to us put us on the path that we need to be on to get to where we need to get to, the place where we deserve to be. And for some of us, it's a lot harder to get there, but it's the lessons that we learn along the way. It's the way that we appreciate people and we appreciate life. Over the years, I've struggled with the why me? Why does this happen to me? Why is life so hard? Am I good enough? Will I ever be good enough? Will someone ever accept me for being me? Will I ever find true love? Will life ever get a little easier? But I know now that everything happens for a reason. That's what I believe. Everything happens for a reason, and you get what you need when the timing is right. After my divorce, I had dated, and date after date, failed date after date. I'd given up. This wasn't for me. What I realize now is that I wasn't ready to date. I had not given myself enough time to heal. I had not figured out who I am. I had not done the work that I needed to do to better myself. So it wasn't time for my partner to come into my life. Last year, I finally got my gift from God. I found my partner, someone who genuinely loves me, someone who lives miles and miles away, but shows me appreciation and love that I've never felt before. True love. Someone who cheerleads me, supports me, and genuinely loves me for being me. God gave me what I needed when it was time. He's definitely my gift from God. And I appreciate now everything that I went through to get where I am today. It wasn't easy. And I thought of giving up a lot of times. But there was always a sign, big or small. It said, you got this. Keep going. I had to put the work in. I had to figure out who I was. And now I can honestly say, I have found God again. I have hope. I can dream again. And I am completely blessed for having a partner, for having the partner, and friends and family who support and love me for being me. If you want to continue hearing about my journey and the stories that I share and the lessons that I've learned, click on the like, click on the subscribe, and I'll see you again